Heathrow is our busiest airport, and every year there are more than 250,000 incoming flights of freight and passengers. The planes arrive from all over the world, and the airport has an army of staff and subcontractors to handle the freight and baggage. Heathrow is also the logical arrival point for many of the exotic foods that we've grown accustomed to seeing in our shops. It's also the focus of a massive illegal trade in smuggled meat. The company Seal Logistics handles many of the food imports that come through Heathrow. It also cleans up the illegal trade when things go wrong. Director Clive Lawrence says that the black market is out of control and that the British government has failed to curb it.
Last year we did 14 checks, and on 14 checks netted nearly 5.5 tonnes of bushmeats, monkeys, live crabs, etc. in suitcases.
The list seems endless, and Clive has pictures to prove it.
Looking at the first picture here, we've got a suitcase that's leaking blood and other liquids out of it, and you can see it contained in the plastic. We've got pictures.
There are also bits of gorilla, whole deer, rats, bats, and all manner of disease-carrying meats. Clive has used his home video camera to film one such consignment that arrived at Manchester Airport. This is typical of what he finds.
This is the 9th of April 2001, time 2 o'clock in the morning. This has come off the GH770 from Accra.
Bushmeat is a delicacy in some parts of the world, and there's great demand for it here in Europe. Yet the checks faced by incoming passenger baggage are cursory when compared to departures. In the UK, there are just occasional spot checks.
Now these suitcases contain nothing other than meat products and food products being brought in. And if you consider there's 5,500 flights a week coming into Heathrow, approximately, then 14 flights last year gives you some idea of the percentage of checks. And if you consider on each of those checks that we've done with the authorities, they have found major volumes and kilos of freight coming through in those suitcases. This year, in 2001, they've done less than 10 so far this year.
And here are some of the more typical finds.
If anybody doubts that this is actually coming in, there's the proof. We've got the bats and we've got the rats. These are common imports in suitcases into the UK, and certainly what we've seen coming through London. Large quantities, in excess of 500 kilos, half a tonne of this particular commodity coming through. And it's this product that carries the real risk to animal health and serious risk to human health.
In recent years, the UK has suffered major outbreaks of both foot and mouth disease and classical swine fever. Both were almost certainly caused by imports. The legitimate import trade is closely monitored. It's the illegal trade that alarms Professor Joe Brownlee of the Royal Veterinary College.
Some of the findings that I've seen coming through the airports is quite horrendous. There's no other word for it. It's a very severe risk. The illegal importation comes from areas of the world that have a range of diseases, some of which we only have a small understanding. There are emerging diseases all the time. There would be at least 1 or 2 new diseases emerging in the animal population every year.
And the threat extends well beyond animals. There are the diseases which are carried by animals but can kill humans.
Well, the ones that stand out, the ones that are highly fatal to humans, which are the Ebola viruses, the herpes viruses. We now know there's a morbilli virus that was isolated from Australia that killed 2 racehorse owners. There's a wide variety of viruses and even bacteria that pose health to humans. The bacteria, the examples that would stand out would be tuberculosis and brucella.
Increasingly, food policy specialists are saying that the globalization and deregulation of international trade has inevitable consequences as diseases spread on the back of travel and trade. Professor Tim Lang believes action is long overdue.
And we're now buying, for example, huge amounts of poultry from the Far East because they can undercut our poultry producers. Well, that's a public health problem.
Professor Lang believes these issues should now be the subject of serious public debate.
We must actually make the connection between animal health and human health and opening up of our food systems, because they are connected.
For Worcestershire pig farmer Chris Hunt, any debate will come too late. He used to run a pig farm. Now he's the caretaker of a quarantine area. Like hotel owners, travel companies, tourist attractions and so many other British businesses, the cost has been both financial and personally traumatic. A once bustling pig farm is now silent, and the memory of the cull will live with him for years.
A sea of dead pigs. Dead pigs are not an odd sight for us, but to see that absolute mass of dead bodies piled one on top of the other, where pigs have been shot over the wall and they've been running around in panic, it was an awful sight.
Meanwhile, back at Heathrow, little has changed. MAF has become DEFRA, but the faces are still the same. And there are still too many government agencies with overlapping responsibilities for policing imports. Elsewhere in the world, there are bio-X-ray machines used to screen all incoming baggage for illegal foods. Clive Lawrence would like to see them in use here.
If you had 25 machines, plus the manning levels, etc., you're probably looking at about £8 million, against a cost to the current government of £4 billion for the foot and mouth outbreak. If that was passed back to the paying passenger, and with the number of passengers, the millions of passengers passing through Heathrow on a daily basis, we're looking at less than 10 pence per person to protect this country, and I think that's very valid.
And what of Britain's ports? Every year, millions of containers like these arrive round Europe to be dispersed by road and rail. Checks on imports like these are very rare, and yet large hauls of illegal meat have been found hidden in containers. So far, it seems the lessons of the past have not been learned. Too many agencies with inadequate funding and powers are charged with keeping potentially lethally contaminated meats out. The recent tragic events in the United States will have sharpened airport security, but X-ray machines designed to detect bombs and guns offer little defence against fatal diseases. It wouldn't take much to considerably reduce the risk. Action now should include a single regulatory body that is properly funded and applies the best international practice.